We're
Okay,
here.
I'm going to leave you to it. I'm going to leave you to it, Sherry.
Okay, so it's 12:26. You're going to start the recording. What's the end time? The end time is about 26, so what, 55?
55 minutes, yeah. Go 55 minutes.
Okay, hold on a second. 12:27 plus 55 is 2, is 8. No, that doesn't work, does it? Is
Just,
1, okay, 102 or something like, no.
You're going to go to one, just go to
120.
120.
120, yeah, it's really like 121 or 22, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
121. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
All right, and I'm recording now, so you're good.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks.
You. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Karmic Evolution's Astrologically Speaking. I'm your host, Sherry Horn Hassan of Karmic Evolution Astrology, and I'm coming to you on June 24th, 2021 from Contact Talk Radio. Just a quick reminder that this show aims to bring you the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution. My guest today is professional astrologer and author Alex TRENOWETH, who, of course, I'll be introducing properly in just a few moments. But first, my usual housekeeping stuff, which is that you can find my posts on my Karmic Evolution Facebook page. And you can also sign up for my newsletter there, which is called Conversations About Consciousness. Just go to the left-hand side of the Karmic Evolution Facebook page, scroll down until you find Join Email List, and it's as simple as that. Also, if you've missed any past shows or you just want to re-listen to one, go to my website at karmicevolution.com and hit radio show on the upper right-hand corner of the banner. You can scroll down on that page and find all of the past archived recordings from all of the shows. And finally, I continue to offer my discounted 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading to my radio show podcast listeners for only $99. If you are looking to gain greater consciousness about your soul's true mission and purpose in this lifetime, if you'd like to glean more information from your natal chart about how to move from chaos to clarity in a particular area of your life, relationships, career, finances, health, all of the above. If you are interested in healing old karmic wounds, learning about your past life karma, and working on co-creating your own future happiness and success, or if you'd like to awaken to your true potential and highest destiny in this lifetime, well, it's easy when you take advantage of my special discounted offer again for listeners, a 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading for only $99. Simply email me, that's Sherry, S-H-E-R-I, at karmicevolution.com, and book your reading today. At almost half the regular price, conscious awareness has never been so easy or so affordable. Okay, so let's get right into this week's Astro news you can use. The Capricorn Full Moon occurs today, June 24th, at 3 degrees 28 minutes of the Capricorn Cancer polarity at 11:40 a.m. Pacific time and 2:40 p.m. Eastern time. That means it's going to be happening literally as we speak. Now, while every full moon reflects the light of the sun's opposite archetypal energy back onto itself as part of each monthly lunar cycle, the intention of this particular Capricorn full moon lunation is to highlight or bring into consciousness the Cancerian traits that no longer serve us on our journey toward achieving our highest, best, and happiest potential in this lifetime. The light of the Cancer sun reflected back onto itself by the Capricorn moon presents a mirror through which we may recognize more consciously, often by revealing what's previously been hidden, our less desirable Cancerian traits so that we may release them. So first, what are Cancer's archetypal traits? We all know, or most of us do, that Cancer energy is lauded as sensitive, compassionate, nurturing, mothering, caring, and that its archetype revolves primarily around concepts related to mother, family, children, emotional security and safety, memory, the past, and habit. Moon-ruled Cancer is often a creature of habit, and it's through our habits we seek and often attain emotional comfort. When we look at the Cancer archetype through a more negative lens, however, we can see how certain habits that provide emotional comfort are not necessarily good for us, at least in the long run or the overall big picture. So since Cancer is associated with nurturing, and one of the best ways to nurture people is through food, if we habitually gravitate towards the memory of associating food with our mother's love, we may develop more negative habits related to overeating. That's just one example. Or say if our early childhood memories of mother are that she was withholding of nurturing, perhaps we habitually deny ourselves food when emotionally upset. It all depends on our memories. Cancer energy is often depicted as a small crab washed ashore by the ocean's waves, a defenseless, unprotected, and vulnerable little creature made prey to the seagulls and other predators both above and on land that must develop a hard protective shell to maintain not only its safety, but its survival. Now, this image stands as a metaphor for emotional vulnerability and our need to develop a protective shell to hide the depths of such vulnerability. Why? Because if we share our deepest, darkest feelings, others may simply prey upon them, expose them, use or manipulate us through our emotions for nefarious purposes, etc. So we can easily understand why this zodiacal sign prefers not to reveal itself easily to others. Because Cancer is one of the most emotionally vulnerable signs, I've said this before on the show and I always go back to it. Stephen Forrest always mentions that if you're talking about sensitivity, you take the dial on sensitive and turn it up to maximum whenever you're referring to Cancer energy or the Cancer archetype. So because it's one of the most emotionally vulnerable signs, revealing deepest feelings can often cause a sense of shame. There's a bit of the, well, if you really knew me, you'd run away screaming in this archetypal energy, along with the sense that if others figure out that our Achilles heel is through our deeply buried emotional pain, exposure of this pain and hurt can leave us vulnerable to attack. And again, as others will, choose to prey upon our emotional vulnerability as a weakness. So one defense mechanism against such emotional vulnerability and the fear of being hurt, or worse yet, emotionally preyed upon, becomes diverting attention away from ourselves through the act of taking care of others. However, in doing so, Cancer can neglect its own hurt, pain, and suffering, preferring instead to ignore expressing any of that and making oneself emotionally vulnerable by deflecting attention again away from oneself and onto the troubles of others. Hence, we have the metaphor of the crab building itself a nice, sturdy, strong, impenetrable cave shell. We often talk about Cancers also going into their cave, in which or behind which they can hide for reasons of its sensitivity, and again, often a profound sense of shame. So the Capricorn moon reminds the Cancer sun at this Capricorn full moon to release these feelings of shame by no longer hiding behind the role of mother or nurturer. It asks the Cancer sun to begin to recognize where its own wounds lie and to develop the kind of emotional toughness necessary to both face and conquer them. So Capricorn, of course, is Saturn ruled, and Saturn often gets a bad rep, and the bad rep is around the fact that he's a harsh taskmaster, that he makes us learn lessons that are painful so that we remember them always and, learn and grow through gaining wisdom, right? So if we again look at the Capricorn moon in this particular instance in its positive light, the emotional toughness it's advising the Cancer sun to develop is so that it can become mature, because Cancer is the sign, of course, of, again, emotional vulnerability, which is what we feel when we're in a more infantile state, when we're hurt. And Cancer feels things viscerally. Cancer is also greatly intuitive. It doesn't know how it knows certain things. It just knows that it knows them. So the Saturn ruled Capricorn moon tells the Cancer sun, you got to grow up. You got to get tough. You can't just stay in your childhood of emotional hurts forever, because true maturity is about becoming an adult. All right. And one of the ways we do that again is by losing some of the extreme vulnerability and shame that we feel if our emotions are revealed. A good example of that is being in grammar school or junior high or high school and having a crush on someone, but it's a secret and you tell your best friend, and then your best friend tells the crush that you have a crush on them. Now if you're of a Cancerian nature, this may send you to hide in your room for a while to stay off of, I mean, we didn't have this when I was young, but stay off of Facebook and stay off of Instagram and stay off of whatever, all these other, TikTok and other social media platforms to avoid being shamed, right? But really, there's no shame in it. It's just your emotions. And that's what the Capricorn moon is reminding the Cancer sun right now. So we have a better chance of achieving greater clarity about our emotional vulnerabilities now, since Mercury stationed direct in Gemini on June 22nd, just a few days ago, although the messenger god's still heading for his third and final square to Neptune in Pisces on July 6th, which is also around the same time he clears his shadow period. So the best remedy for this is to seek answers through meditative, mindful, and creative endeavors and expression now. Go to the source, as we used to say when I was a business journalist. My guess is that we'll all find direction from the divine realm through meditation, through mindfulness, through creative. I always use the example of because Venus is going to move into Leo this week too. That the child making a finger painting, a 3-year-old, 2.5-year-old, when you ask them what they're drawing, they're lost in the imaginal realm of thinking that their mess on the paper is actually a beautiful picture. So we encourage that because we encourage creativity. So if we can get into that mind space now, we may be able to receive, and the messages we may be able to receive at this full moon are about our that revealing our emotional vulnerabilities becomes our strength, not our weakness. And to help us in this process, Neptune stations retrograde June 25th, from then until early January of 2022. And our mission becomes allowing the dissolution of our strongest, most resistant ego boundaries in order to go deep and find spiritual strength from within, rather than looking outward for another or others to save us. I mean, we can see a dichotomy here, but it's kind of like if we're stuck in our emotional hurt and pain, and we don't want to express it for fear of being found out and made vulnerable, then one of the things we want to do is dissolve the Saturn type ego boundaries that keep us from acknowledging it's okay. That strength is we can be what we formerly thought made us appear weak, but that's actually our strength. Okay. So we have to disabuse ourselves of some of the ego's notions that doing certain things, revealing certain things is not a mature way to go. It's actually the opposite. Now, Venus enters Leo on June 26th or the 27th, depending on your time zone, and we gain the ability for greater self-expression, which is helpful within our relationships and our creative endeavors. We may feel more pride in our relationships now, at least until Venus moves on July 21st into Virgo, until and the impetus to create and enjoy beauty, particularly through expression through the arts. So Venus seeks harmony in its relationships, and in Leo, it won't accept anyone we deem unworthy of our love and admiration. But there are a few storm clouds brewing at this lunation, and these may negate the moon's recent sextile and sun's trine to Jupiter in Pisces, which occurs right before the exact lunation today, both of which, can make us buoyantly optimistic. But these storm clouds take the form of Mars in Leo, waxing toward an opposition to Saturn in Aquarius, which perfects July 1st, and Mars exact square to Uranus on July 3rd. So altogether, we're looking here at the potential for a great deal of slowly growing frustration and ego conflicts with others that build to a crescendo and result in sudden or impulsive or rash behavior that we might come to regret later. So the key here is to avoid allowing any annoying frustrations to build to such a point that we end up blowing up everything in our need to break free. The more need, there's a sort of little bit of a throwing the baby out with the bathwater in that kind of analogy. The more need there is for creative change emanating from within us, the more propensity for explosive anger to get the best of us eventually. And with Mars opposing Saturn, often the course is that the frustration builds and then we end up taking out our anger on an inappropriate subject. The classic example of that is you get yelled at by your boss and you can't yell back. Boss is Saturn. Saturn says, Saturn has the power to fire you if you talk back to him or her. And then instead you go home and you start screaming at your kids, So you're taking your anger, you're taking your frustration out, which has no outlet in terms of expressing your frustration to the actual object that's causing the frustration. And so you deflect it off and you communicate it to others who have nothing to do with the situation that caused your frustration. So we can use the station of Mercury that occurred yesterday, 2 days ago on June 22nd, and its pending square to Neptune also to rise above the fray and again receive greater knowledge from within about how to resolve inner conflicts, frustrations, and anger now and how to express these. And we see the signs of this growing Mars T-square to Saturn and Uranus in the recent vote, if we're looking at the collective as a macrocosm from which we can draw down into our personal lives, meaning the recent vote by the U.S. Senate to block discussion of a voting rights bill, which essentially stymies efforts to enforce the rights of all American citizens to engage in a free and fair voting process. Because Saturn's in Aquarius and squaring Uranus, we're going to see people probably, and I already have on the news, getting on buses, going to Washington, protesting, making their voices heard. Likewise, we see also, as is typical at this time of year, a good number of U.S. Supreme Court decisions being handed down. Saturn, right? We had the opportunity, we had the upholding of the constitutionality this past week of the Affordable Care Act, through which this year alone, 10 million more Americans were able to receive health care. The Supreme Court also upheld the religious rights of a Pennsylvania Catholic charities organization to discriminate against placing children in the care of LGBTQ, gay, couples, however, gender, whatever, transgender. And yesterday, the court defended the First Amendment rights of free speech of a high school student who wrote a vulgar Snapchat message, and I think this dates back a while, saying that the communication by this gal was off campus and therefore protected under free speech First Amendment rights. And there's more that I'm not mentioning, but my point is that what's obvious is that some of these decisions will cause a great deal of frustration within certain segments of the population. And what will happen based on, different pockets and different populations based on these decisions remains to be seen, but my advice is for us to keep our eyes on that waxing Mars T-square and to figure out where it relates to us all on a more personal level. Okay, so now I'd like to welcome back to today's show my guest, Alex TRENOWETH. Alex, Agent 144 for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, is a school teacher and professional astrologer who specializes in child development, particularly the important adolescent stage of life. She speaks at astrology conferences around the world, contributes to important astrological publications, and has won several major awards for unique research based on her book, Growing Pains, The Astrology of Adolescence, published by the Wessex Astrologer. Alex also recently authored the Adolescent Astrology Report, created to help parents and teachers better understand their own children as well as those they teach. Now president of the Certified Astrological Professional Program for the International Society of Astrological Research, known as ESAR, Alex recently started her own astrology school called Rohini Academy of Astrology. In addition, her new book, Mirror, Mirror, Famous Piece of People and the Actors Who Have Portrayed Them, with a foreword by Julia Parker, is due to be published soon. Welcome, Alex. How are you today?
Hi, Sherry. All's good. Been a lovely day today. It's warming up nicely in London. We've had a couple cold days recently, but it's nice and sunny for a change here.
Yeah, we've had the same, and I'm in the in New Jersey, just about 45 minutes out of New York, but closer to the coast. And we've had a couple of really gray and rainy days interspersed with really, really hot days. and we're gearing up for our hurricane season. So
Oh, wow.
hopefully
I
that's
know.
something you guys never experienced in London.
No, I've never had, there isn't anything exciting like hurricanes in London. I mean,
Well,
there
I
was
don't
a
know.
hurricane once, a long time ago before I came here, but the weather's pretty mild. I was saying to somebody, we don't even really get thunderstorms here.
Right. Yeah. You have a kind of gray summer usually, right? Is that right?
Have a few really blistering days,
Mm-hmm.
but then it starts to rain, and then September's usually quite nice, and then it's all downhill from there, really. It gets darker and
I know.
colder.
I was just thinking, of course we had the summer solstice on June 21st, right? And it's like I'm the type of person who likes to think that I am always a glass as half full, but all I can think of is, oh no, the days are going to start getting shorter
Yeah,
now.
yep.
So I'm like, stop with that pessimism, Sherry.
And, up here, because we're up further up north in New York, it gets dark really, really early. I mean, when I was
Yeah.
teaching, I'd leave my house in the dark and I'd come home in the dark,
Yep.
because it starts
Yep.
getting dark around 3:30
Yeah. And it's even the
December.
same for those of us who commute, like in the New York area. You get up early because it takes you an hour and a half to get to your job. And by the time you get home, it's almost pitch black, If you leave the office at 5 o'clock, it's pretty dark by the time you get home. So anyway, let's talk some astrology. Um, just wondering if there's anything you'd like to share with our audience about the potential repercussions of today's Capricorn full moon, whether it's on a collective or a personal basis.
Well, because I've spoken to you before on your show,
Mm-hmm.
I knew you were going to give a little forecast, so I did something a little bit different.
Mm.
As I live here in London, we don't hear too much American news. So I went on CNN America, and I looked to see what were the headlines,
Mm-hmm.
and Britney Spears is in the headlines, and I thought, oh, wait, now I haven't heard anything about Britney Spears, but I sort of went into this little rabbit hole about,
Right.
how her father's been
The
controlling her,
conservatorship. Right. Right.
and so she's going to go through this hearing in a couple days. So I thought,
Yep.
okay, well, she's going to be an interesting one. So let me pull up her chart. And I
Uh-huh.
nearly fell out of my chair
Uh-huh.
because tomorrow's full moon is right on her IC, which means the sun is on her midheaven. So,
Ah, okay.
that was really interesting.
Okay. And
Then,
it's today's full moon because we're pre-recording,
oh,
but
of
the show
course,
is going to air
sorry.
tomorrow. But that's okay. That's okay. I just didn't
Yep.
want anyone to get
Today's full moon,
confused.
that's
Today's
the
full
lunar
moon.
eclipse.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
I think her appearance is today in the States. So tomorrow we will know probably. Well, I don't know if there'll be an outcome, but there'll be tons of news about what she looked like if they, were able to film it or take pictures or whatever. I don't know. But
yes,
anyway, go
well,
ahead. So how do you
transiting
think it'll
Saturn.
play for her? What do you think? I
Well,
mean,
I'm transiting Saturn is on her natal moon, bang on, same degree.
wow.
Pluto is within 2 degrees of her North Node and Venus in Capricorn, and transiting Venus is on her North Node. So I'm thinking we're looking at a complete change in direction
Yep.
for Brittany. Now, the father, which I think is represented by the Saturn on her moon, I mean,
Yep.
that looks to me to be still quite ominous. And I
Mhm.
thought to myself,
Mhm.
well, maybe it won't be a complete break, but there's going to be there's going to be some changes going on for her. So, I was feeling, a little bit hopeful about that, she's going to get some control back, maybe not a complete break, but, more in control of her own life. So I think that's going to
Mm.
be good.
Mhm. Mhm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm wondering too if you have any insights you'd like to share, just because it's so much of what we astrologers talk about this whole year that we just recently had the second Saturn Uranus square, and the final one won't occur until December 24th. Is there anything that you would like to talk about in relationship to that would help our audience navigate this a little better?
Yeah, just that I did a talk on this very topic for the
Hmm.
Cosmic Intelligence Agency late last
Ah,
year, and there
cool.
were a few things and a few people that I picked up on.
Hmm.
First of all, there was the singer Odetta, who was born in
Hmm.
1930. She was born with a Saturn-Uranus square, and she was often called the voice of the civil rights movement,
Hmm.
and she inspired lots of other singers. So we were talking about people protesting and wanting
Hmm.
to change things. And I've noticed when I watch YouTube videos, because we watch a lot of those these days, I
Sure.
see a lot of people reminding everybody to be kind and be good, be polite, give people, be patient. And I think that's really good advice, for navigating the Saturn Uranus square, because it is all about, the things we thought we could rely on are being challenged. And so it's the new versus the old. As a teacher, as parents, we're seeing the educational system, really coming under a lot of pressure to change. And I said last time I was with you that I think this is good. It might not mean that, you can send your kids off to school, 6 or 7 hours a day, but I think that, we're recognizing that this old institution is no longer serving its purpose anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers realize that, we're teaching kids skills that they probably won't need in a few years' time. And we know that the children can outdo us on technology. If I have a problem with my phone, I'm going to give it to one of my children.
Right, right,
They could
right.
they could fix it faster than I can.
Of
And
course.
so I just think, a lot of old institutions will be coming under pressure and cracking and changing. We see it in astrology.
Sure.
The millennials are coming into astrology. They're changing it. They're making us aware of issues that, maybe we haven't been thinking about too much. And, you know, change is in the air.
Yeah.
2021 is completely obliterated by Uranus
Yeah.
square Saturn. Nothing to be afraid of. Maybe obliterated wasn't a great word to use, but it's gonna change.
Well, I'm thinking of asking you, this trigger, because obviously Mars, it's not the fastest moving planet, but it moves much faster than the outers, and Jupiter and Saturn. Do you think we'll see a trigger here? I mean, that's generally what we would probably conclude, right? By the time that Mars finishes opposing Saturn and squaring Uranus in the short term.
Well, lots going on in the Sibley chart. The Sibley chart is the birth chart that astrologers use to to see what's going on in the USA. And the thing that I thought was interesting is that the sun, this happens every year, the sun is on the Venus of the USA. And of course, what a full moon means is that the moon is opposite this. So I looked at that and I thought, wow, American women, under stress. But, the stress, the thing about stress and tension is that an opposition shows that the tension can't be held. It has to be resolved. There has to be a decision made to eliminate this tension, as you were talking about in introduction.
Mhm.
So, I think, it's been building up for a while that, women are just getting tired of having things explained to them by men. And I
Mhm.
went through this situation a couple days ago. I'm a weightlifter. And
Mhm.
I've been posting little videos of me lifting, very heavy weights. And some random guy who I wasn't even friends with sent me this message, giving me, several different reasons why I shouldn't be weightlifting and I should be swimming. And I tell you, today I wish I hadn't blocked him because I posted a video of me leg pressing 190 pounds
Mhm. Wow. You
just to
go,
show him,
girl.
So I mean, I
Right.
think it's, that's just my personal example, but I think a lot of women are going through this when they're just tired of men telling them how to do things,
Mm, mhm, mhm. Wow.
and transiting Mars is on the north node of the USA, and we know that with some of the things I've been reading about the USA, things have been quite hot in that, there are a big push for change and some
Yeah.
acts of violence to get attention or to get the news coverage or whatever. It might be a thing, and it has been a thing over the past couple of years. But tensions, as you said, are really brewing. And of course, the USA is having its Pluto return,
Right, right,
which is quite a big thing too.
right.
So but Jupiter just passed over the moon of the USA, so that's you know
Interesting.
buoyancy and confidence.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's buoyancy and confidence and optimism in the world, but that need to fight, I think is something that's quite strong in the USA.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just pulled up the chart. I'm looking at Mars on the North Node. That's interesting to me because Mars rules the fourth and the fifth houses in the I use Placidus. So we've got repercussions coming in the in the Cancerian fourth house and the fifth house, Sun Leo ruled fifth house, which is interesting, you know. So maybe opportunities for us to change some perspectives from our habitual notions.
Mm.
Those that we grew up with. I just finished reading a couple of history books in the last couple of months. So, U.S. history and the myth that was that many Americans were educated with, that is completely, if it, that is at least partially, if not completely, untrue. That promoted the prejudice and things of that nature. And then the fifth house might be an opportunity for us to develop some creative solutions or take some creative actions around that, which would be lovely,
Mm.
if we can get there, you know, if we can dialogue, right? Which brings
Yeah.
me to another question, because I do want to get to talking about your book, but I just want to ask you one more thing about Mercury's stationing direct. How do you feel about some of what I talked about, with the fact that it's still in its shadow period till it reaches about 24 Gemini, around July 7th or 8th, and that we're having that final square? Because I don't know about anyone else, and this is for our listeners and you, Alex, but my mind has been mush. I have been so completely unable to focus, and I really am not that way, you know? So this past like month or two, it's just been like weird. And yeah, I have to take my own advice, of course. But do you think that those of us who are experiencing that kind of confusion or change in direction, you know, with Mercury's typical retrograde period, that, you know, we'll come out of this haze and it'll be full speed ahead by, you know, beginning to middle of July?
I'm going to say
Or,
something controversial.
yay, go
Uh,
ahead.
like about 15% of the population, including Janis Joplin, Michael Jackson, and Hillary Clinton, I have natal Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, so do
And
I. Yeah.
so I don't struggle. I mean, I love Mercury retrograde periods because everyone else is complaining about Mercury retrograde, and I'm just sailing through it, writing books, editing things, and doing all sorts of stuff. So I don't suffer through Mercury retrograde. Now, I've done a couple things, a couple tests on Mercury retrograde. So as a teacher, there would be days, because our students here in England, they use a public transport system to get to school. We don't
Mhm.
have separate school buses for
Mhm.
schools. So there's some days when the buses will be late, traffic jam or whatever,
Yep.
and there'll be a notice going out to the school, to the teachers, don't have a go anybody who's late because the buses are late.
Right.
And so I started keeping track of this, wondering, does this
Right.
happen more often with Mercury retrograde? And I found absolutely nothing to suggest that.
You know what? I've seen the same thing, studies by other astrologers, I think related to airports. And I think they
Frank
concluded the
Wachowski.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and
I don't know if it was Frank, but I know I've seen, years ago, I saw something, but yeah, so that it's not necessarily, but it is true, I think, during Mercury retrograde, because it's related to local transportation, it can affect your car. It can
yeah,
affect
I've
just the, you know, I
I've
mean, there are
traveled
other
all over
things.
the world. We don't
Mhm.
get on planes all the time. Well, back before lockdown, and
Mhm.
the only time I've ever had trouble with, there was one time when I was denied being able to board a plane because I was in South Africa and I was coming back to India, and I didn't have my plane ticket booked from India back to England. And so they made me do that before they let me board, and I missed the plane. That was
Mhm.
when Mercury was direct. And I had a
Right.
bike accident, Mercury was direct. So I've never found that any of these things that people describe during what that should happen during Mercury retrograde has actually happened to me.
But don't you
So
think too that that's related to other transits in the chart? You know, for example, I was supposed to go on a trip, and I had the day before, I had a problem with the mechanized, the electric window. My window wouldn't go up, right? And I was going to drive to the airport, to a parking lot near the airport, leave my car for 3, 4, 5 days, whatever, get the plane, and you know, go and come back. And I noticed, I think Jupiter was transiting my south node. And so I had to, you know, panic. It was late in the day. I called the auto place. I was able to drop the car off overnight, but I had to leave at noon the next day in order to catch the flight. And the guy called me at 8 o'clock and said, "Oh, we fixed it. You know, it's fine." So it was like, I don't think it had anything to do with Mercury retrograde, but Jupiter's travel. and I was traveling. I was probably going to California or something like that. I don't think I was going internationally, but, but yeah, so I think if things like that happen, we can look, if we don't see Mercury's retrograde, we can look at other reasons. So there's usually something we can relate it to. It's just that, some people.
It's just I'm not the first person. I won't blame Mercury retrograde for anything. I mean, because I think,
Right.
as a god, he's antagonized by that. And I think if you start saying, oh, my computer crashed, blame Mercury retrograde, he's going to be coming right back to you and messing up more things. So I think, take him as he comes. He's retrograde 6-7 weeks a year of the year.
Exactly.
You can't stop everything
and I don't usually put too much behind the shadow period, which a lot do, because that elongates his retrograde periods even more, and it comes out to be like a third of the year or something. But I will say this, and I've said this before on my show, I believe the real purpose of Mercury retrograde is to allow us to suspend the ego-oriented left brain portion, logical, empirical, if you see it, you believe it, portion of the psyche, and allow Mercury to be the psychopomp. He goes down into the unconscious and he brings back into consciousness the information that's lying there, our soul's wisdom, to incorporate it into our conscious ego orientation of the world,
Now I like that a lot better, Sherry.
Oh, it's definitely, to me, that's it. So the thing is, if things happen to you during Mercury retrograde, and I have a million stories too, but I never went to look to see if it was during Mercury retrograde. It was probably before I even started doing astrology, like being on en route in a hired car to go from Jersey to New York to the pier to take my son on a cruise, and realizing I forgot some crucial information. At that time, it's a whole long story, but I was divorced and I needed my ex-husband's permission to take our son out of the country. And we were going down to Bermuda or something like that, to Nassau or whatever. And so I had to really scramble to get to the dock. And then, because I was fortunate that the ship wasn't leaving for several hours, was able to get someone, because I had the letter, I had just forgotten it at home. So I had to have a neighbor break into my house by crawling through an open window and go into my files or whatever, find the letter, go back to Staples or whatever and fax it, because back then not that many people had their home faxes, and get it to the ship before we left, So, stuff like that, forgetting your passport, when you're on your way to the airport, stuff like that has happened to me. But still, I still look at the reason that it might happen. If it was, let's just say, during Mercury retrograde, is because the left brain is suspended. You're busy working on other stuff. You're working on growing your wisdom, your ancient soul wisdom, and bringing it up from the underworld into the realm of consciousness. But we digress. Let's get on to your book. So tell us about your new book. I know, and I mentioned this in your intro, that it's titled Mirror, Mirror, Famous People and the Actors Who Have Portrayed Them. But I'm interested in knowing what sparked your desire to write on this subject. I mean, I'm going to assume, at the least, you're a movie buff, but how was this book idea born?
Well, I was watching Julia and Julia, about Julia Child, the cook, and the blogger, the very famous blogger, who took on the Julia Challenge to replicate all 500 of Julia's recipes in a year. And as a child, I was very fascinated with Julia Child. I liked her voice. And I liked, the way she did what she did with such passion.
So funny. I watched her too a little bit. Yeah, when I was young.
Yeah, but I was at home with my mom, and we went to the movies together. And I just completely forgot that Meryl Streep was Meryl Streep, and I was just so caught up in her performance as Julia Child. Meryl Streep is quite an average sized actress. Julia Child was 6'2", and with clever camera angles, they made her look really tall. And I was just absolutely fascinated. And I thought, just for a giggle, let me see the astrology. And what I discovered was that Julia Child and I have the same ascendant, 6 degrees Gemini. And the synastry between Meryl Streep and Julia Child was just remarkable. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Meryl was able to step into Julia because of all this great synastry. So that started me off watching a lot of biopics. So I watched Mata Hari, which is a 1935 biopic. In Jesse James was another older one. I mean, and I watched probably about 200 biopics, all with the
Wow.
astrology, looking at the astrology. And then last year, I thought, okay, now it's time to start writing this all up. And so I probably had about 150, but we pared it down to less than that. But in every single case, the astrology was working. It wasn't like, I eliminated a movie from my book because the astrology wasn't working. It was all working, but we had to, narrow things down a little bit. So but my favorite was Rocket Man, Taron Egerton and Elton John. I mean, I've always loved Elton's music, but
Right.
Taron Egerton is so cute. Well, they have a Sun Moon conjunction in Aries.
Oh, nice. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's just loads of examples. I just we found out that we left off the Imitation Game. So I had to go back and do the Imitation Game. So I give a bit of a synopsis of the film, and then I go into the astrology. And I'm not going in, every little detail. I'm, keeping it quite broad, but very tight aspects. 1 or 2 degrees, conjunctions or oppositions. And because I thought, if you get too detailed, then it gets boring. And I was thinking, other people could take my data to the next level and write their own stuff for one of the magazines, astrology magazines out there. So,
Right. Right.
but it was a lot of
Interesting.
fun, and I
Yeah,
watched
I
it.
imagine it was. I mean, you're definitely a movie buff, I was raised by a mother who was a movie buff, so movie and theater, so we watched a lot of stuff too. And my parents back in the 60s when there wasn't any air conditioning in the summers in New York,
Oh,
so the movie theater was a respite on a weekend, and you could then, for one price, sit in the movie theater all day. So, not that we did, but they used to have double features, you know. So one would be a James Bond movie and then there'd be a kiddie movie or vice versa. So both of my parents were big, but particularly my mother, So it's cool. So anyone interested. So who's the primary audience for this book? Are you is the book for other people who are studying astrology because you use charts and stuff, or is it for the layman as well?
I think I like to take that step when I um, am working with people who don't know much about astrology, but
Mm-hmm.
I aim to get them more interested. So it's
Mm,
not star sign stuff, although there are, suns conjunct sun and stuff like that. But it's meant for people to get more interested in astrology. So it does mention astrology, but if you don't want to read the astrology at the end of each movie, you don't have to. But the synopsis is there, and that's interesting. But that's who I write for. People who know their sun sign and maybe a little bit about astrology, but not the thing called synastry, which is comparing charts and getting them more interested, getting them practicing, looking at 2 charts together, and things like that.
mm-hmm. So I see in your book that you align your chapters, like you start each chapter with the outermost planet. I'm sorry, but you start each chapter with a planet and you start with the outermost planet, Pluto, and then show the Pluto connections between the subjects of certain films and the actors who portray them. Can you give our listeners some examples of how how movies, actors, and real life people align astrologically, just pick a few randomly so we get an idea. Pluto is obviously intense, and I think you've got some intense examples there.
Yeah. Okay. Just let me get myself.
Yeah, take your
Yeah. So
time.
a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's Tom Hulse. Sorry, not Tom Hulse. Tom Hanks
Tom
and
Hanks.
Fred Rogers. They were a very interesting thing because the in the movie, a journalist is very hurt and wounded with his relationship with his father, and he has to do a write up on Mr. Rogers, and the journalist is very negative and doesn't believe. He thinks it's all an act.
Right.
But Mr. Rogers gets this journalist to work on his relationship with his father, and his father is dying. And so
Mm.
it was extremely interesting to see the effect. And there was one scene that actually made me cry. They were on the train together, and these kids were watching him and pointing at Mr. Rogers. And suddenly, like they'd all just kind of burst into "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood."
Right. I
And it
saw
was
that clip.
so,
I didn't
oh,
see the movie, but I saw that clip. Yeah.
yeah, it was so adorable. But anyway, uh, Fred Rogers has his Neptune at 26 degrees Leo, and Tom Hanks' Pluto is right on his Neptune. So,
Mm,
this is just an example of how, the transformation and
mm.
the gentleness of Fred Rogers, transforms Tom Hanks, who's playing this character. And yeah, so that's one example. Tom Hanks' Sun in Cancer is on Fred Rogers' natal Pluto. So,
Okay. There's
it's
some
things,
Pluto
it's,
connections. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a lot of things like this. Tom Hanks' MC is on Fred Rogers' Jupiter in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
And then also in this chapter is Al Capone,
Yes.
the very famous gangster. And the person who played him, Rod Steiger, actually refused to do the role because he said that he didn't want to glorify Al Capone. But the character is so deeply unpleasant that, that didn't happen.
Horribly plutonic.
Yeah. Well, they
Yeah.
have a Saturn Jupiter conjunction.
Ah.
Um, and Rod Steiger's Pluto in Cancer is on Al Capone's South Node within a
Ah.
few degrees.
Interesting. Very
And
interesting.
and the actor's Mars in Gemini is on the gangster's Pluto.
Mm.
So he's
Mm-hmm.
tapping right into that violence. And then Madame Curie, who worked with radioactive elements, um,
Mm-hmm.
she was played, Greer Garson played her in the movie. And she had, I'm just looking at the chart now, her south node, the actress's south node is on the on Madame Curie's moon. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a very, very interesting.
Well, that implies some kind of past life connection, right?
Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
found that actually the nodes are very, very important. I mean, just because it's in the Pluto chapter doesn't mean, and I don't talk about other things, but I found that the nodes were extremely important. And I also looked at the transits for when the movie was released.
Right. I was going to mention that. I saw that you draw a tri-wheel. Yeah. What do
Yes.
you learn through that? That's really interesting.
Well, certain themes of the film, because this is the first time the film was released to an audience. And we understand the character more because this film has been released. A good example is Alan Turing. Now he was
Hmm.
quite an obscure character because he was working on the Enigma code. So his military records were buried, and
Hmm.
destroyed. And
Hmm.
it's only because of the imitation game that we start to understand what he did. He actually won the war,
Right.
and saved millions of lives. And because of him, as Keira Knightley says in the film, because of him and his unusualness, cities are were saved, and
Right.
people
Right.
are
Cracking the codes, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of fascinating stuff in that movie and also just general stuff about World War II and code breaking.
mm,
I remember reading, I'm sure you know, I don't remember if it was in the movie or not, but um, I forget which tribe it is, but they used Native American language, the Americans, right? Are you
mm.
familiar with that?
Yes, I can't remember
Yeah.
which one
I
it
can't
was, but
remember the specifics, yeah, but nobody else knew the language clearly, so it was essentially kind of an unbreakable way to communicate,
yeah, but
or impenetrable, yeah.
um,
Um,
Alan Turing had Uranus exactly conjunct his midheaven in Aquarius. And Benedict Cumberbatch had his Venus Saturn opposite to it within a 3 degree orb.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
just another example how the actor is picking up on the character and projecting this because clearly from the start of the movie, Turing has some sort of autism and he doesn't understand how people what people say when they communicate the
Mm-hmm.
way most of us do. So maybe some Asperger's or something like that in there.
Right, right. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's absolutely fascinating. But the movie was released. It was Keira Knightley's Saturn return exactly,
Oh wow.
and Pluto was conjunct Clark, who was his fiance, Turing's fiance, the North Node in Capricorn, and she was kind of a hidden figure too. But this movie showed us how her affection for Turing helped him get along better with people, and
Mm,
therefore aided the building of the machine, which was called Christopher, but I think it was called Colossus in real life. But
Hmm.
so little things like that about bringing things to life and showing us the deeper meaning. And I think if you're an astrologer, even if you're a beginning astrologer, you're going to be able to understand, that's how they did it. It's not just about great acting and brilliant makeup. It's about understanding the person you're about to play, and the astrology helps you step in to the person.
So cool. Now we have about 5 minutes left. So I just want to ask you briefly, what was your favorite part about writing this book? And then I want you to share with everyone how they can get a copy of the book, what else you've got going on, etc. But what did you enjoy most? I mean, I would assume it was watching all the films,
I was
but I
just going to
don't
say
know.
the book is dedicated to my kitty, Mr. Bubbles. And
Oh,
Mr. Bubbles
yeah.
and I, we watched all these films together, and he was my writing buddy too. He'd always be with me on
Oh,
my lap, purring away. But his last night on Earth was we were watching Lawrence of Arabia together. And I just like to think that, between his cuddly human and Peter O'Toole, we gave him the best possible send off.
oh,
And so the book is dedicated to Mr. Bubbles. He's mentioned on the back cover, and so
oh.
that was my favorite part was cuddling Mr. Bubbles, either watching a film or writing.
Oh, that's so sweet. And I always feel like pets are Virgoing, so there's a nice Virgo transfer there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Emotional bonding. Um, so tell everybody, because I don't think the book is released yet. Is that right?
We're still doing bits and pieces. I just sent off the
Okay.
imitation game yesterday, so we had to get that done. I just got the full cover, front and back cover, the other day. So we're still doing little bits and pieces of it, but we're hoping to launch. My birthday is July 20th, and my publisher's birthday is the 19th of July. So
Hmm.
I think we both are hoping that we can get the launch done before then.
Okay.
But
So
we're
in
so
about four
close.
weeks or so.
Yeah, this book took so much editing. If you can imagine, every movie had 3 bits of data in it, and
Right.
all the astrological stuff had to be checked as well. So it was a really, really slow process to get it
Yeah.
edited.
Yep.
But
As a professional editor, I know it well.
thank goodness my editor, has that Virgo moon. So
Right, exactly. Yeah,
because I don't.
there's no one to edit but Virgos. I mean, you got to have Virgos somewhere. It doesn't have to be sun, moon, but or sixth house planets or something, or stellium or whatever. So, yeah, and fact checking and all that, like where's what's the capital, what's the lowercase, what's the correct. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
yeah,
and we had
yeah.
to check it on the actual charts too. That all the
Yep.
information because because I wasn't doing it quickly. There were times when I missed out the capital of the of the title
Right,
of the
right,
initial
right.
letter.
Well, then
So
even researching it becomes problematic because different sites you have to go, you have to know which is the reputable place to go to get, like I said, go to the source. But what's the source? You've got to really research that. But so where can people buy it and how can they contact you if they want to find out what else is going on? Do you have anything else going on your calendar? So give us the deets.
yes, okay. So you can buy advance copies through the Wessex Astrologer. But if you live in the States, it might be better to wait until it comes out on Amazon. There will be a book launch. Stormy Grace, if you've heard of her, she's going to be
Mm-hmm.
one of my hosts, and Yulia Simis from the Cosmic
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence Agency. So we have the USA and Australia and England launch, and we're hoping to start planning that very soon. As soon as we
Great.
have a bit more of a confirmation of the
So where
release
can
date.
people go to find out more about that or sign up for these notifications?
Yes, you can find me on social media. I'm very creatively called Alex TRENOWETH on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and it's also the name of my website. And so I'll keep information posted. You can join my newsletter is another way. There's lots of stuff on my website. The adolescent reports are on there. You just there's a
Is the website
Alex.
your name? Is that
Yes,
alextrenoweth.com? And it's
alextrenoweth.co.uk.
say that again, sorry.
.co.uk.
Okay. So for those of us in the States, it's Alex Alex and Trenoweth is TRENOWETH dot co dot uk.
.uk.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just wanted to make sure we get that straight. All right. Well, thank you, Alex, so much for
Thank you,
making time to
Sherry.
be with us today. Good luck with the book, and we'll keep a tab on when it's being launched, and maybe it can send me a little blip or something, and I'll make sure I announce it on the show again so people
Thank
can
you.
just go directly. Oh, you're more than welcome. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks to everyone else for joining us today. I hope you've all found the information presented here helpful as you continue your karmic evolution in this lifetime. Be sure to join me next week, July 1st, for another episode of Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. Till then, may your journey be filled with karmic healing and the joy of greater consciousness. Namaste. Alex?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we have to get off this line. He'll cut it and
Okay.
probably put the outro music on. But thank you
Okay.
so much. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
everything. You've got so much going on, I think. Are
I
you
do.
doing any other presentations or anything in the near future?
Yes, I'm doing something for Johannesburg in
Oh,
July, and something
interesting.
for Astrology Niagara too in July. So lots of stuff going on.
Niagara, New York?
Yes.
What's
No,
Oh.
Canada. Sorry, she's Canadian.
Oh, okay. There was not the Great Lakes conference. There was something else going on. Yeah, I get confused. I know there's a Lilydale thing going on, and that's in, I think, September.
Oh, right. Is that a
Yeah.
live conference?
No, it's virtual still, I
Right.
believe. No, Lilydale, I think, is live. Oh, gosh, you know what? I'm not sure, but I think it is live. I think it is. I know Ann Ortley was supposed to be part of it, and she, for some reason, had to drop out. I think Ronnie Dreyer is going to be there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and a few other really interesting people. So that'll be fun. All right. Well, good luck with everything. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'll hit you up maybe in a few months' time, see if you want to come back.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Fabulous.
anytime you want to announce something or got something going on, hit me up.
Okay, I will do.
All right. Okay,
Okay.
cool. All right. Take
Cheers.
care, Alex.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.